Earlier back at the end of the night.
Your butt's in.
I know.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Alright, so let's
Slip out.
call this meeting back to order
My butt
again. We
doesn't
had,
slip
excuse me, just come out of closed session, and, I believe that there is a motion to be made.
I'd like to make a motion. My motion would be that the board authorizes staff to purchase buildable lots using funds from the density reduction fund not to exceed $44,400 by December 31st, 2018, for the purpose of preventing potentially marketable lots from being permanently lost to green space.
Second. Okay, we do have a motion, and a second is, we ready for a vote? Alright, all those in favor? 3, 4 in favor, all those opposed? One opposed, okay? Alright, let's move on to, announcements. Anybody got anything?
I do. I have
Or you want to go through the,
let me know when the correct time is. I have a long list that Mitch gave me to,
okay, that is, information from staff that you're gonna present.
Mhm.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and do that now?
Okay.
On the other hand, Leslie, can you see if she has
Is there-
an announcement as
Oh,
well?
you have one announcement first, okay,
I have a couple.
you're on first.
Okay, so November 17th, alongside the craft fair, we are hosting the second annual Thanksgiving food drive. The Girl Scouts Troop 44348, they will be collecting food. There is a list, I believe it is on several of the Facebook pages, of non-perishables that we are looking for, as well as turkey, ham, any kind of meat, eggs, milk, stuff like that, anything to make an actual complete dinner. And then we are also looking for recipients to accept those meals. And I am taking appointments right now for Sunday, November 18th, so that people that want to come in and pick up a meal can. So just email me at bodoliphant@suddenvalley.com.
Right,
Yep.
okay.
Can I ask a question about all of that?
Yeah.
The way it was described, it made it sound like you could only donate if you were donating a full meal.
No, you do not have to donate a full meal.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then-
just bring in whatever you want. There are preferred, we do have a preferred list basically, so that, you know, like, if somebody wants fresh potatoes as opposed to like flakes, you can do that. But it's up to you. I'm also taking into consideration dietary restrictions, like non-dairy, gluten-free, fat-free, maybe sugar-free, like for pies or whatever. So, you know, take into consideration those too. So, but as of right now, we have 7 families. Our goal is 10, but I am always hoping for more. So, yeah, just bring in whatever you want.
And the other question was, you were setting up appointments for families to make
Yeah.
and request.
Well, yeah, they're, what I'm asking is that recipients that are interested in receiving a meal, email either me, Summer Cronk, Francine Warden, or Sam Ashlock, and they will let us know. I've asked that people email with me with like 15-minute increments times that would work for them, and I just get back to them and let them know which one would be, you know, where we can fit them in. So, you know, it should take about 15 minutes for each person to come in and receive a meal. So, and they get to pick and choose whatever they want. So it's not, we don't just, you know, pre-box everything and say you have to take this, you know. So.
And they're not all at the same time, so
Yeah.
nobody will see each other.
Yeah. So there's that. And Breakfast with Santa volunteers, we are in need. Our next meeting for the volunteers is November 29th at 6:30 p.m. at El Agave. And Breakfast with Santa is December 8th, 9 to noon. And following that will be the golf cart parade at 12:45. This year we've collaborated, and so that way we can have as much participation for both events. So, you know, people with, you know, small kids don't have to pick and choose which one they have to rush through before, you know.
Do you want people to sign up for the golf cart parade?
You're going to sign up with Robin Dieter with the Recreation Department. The subcommittee, the Recreation Subcommittee is the one holding the, or hosting the golf cart parade this year, so
Okay.
you would reach out to them.
Okay.
So,
Eric, you have some.
I do, tagging on to the Breakfast with Santa, actually, both of my comments have to do with board member participation. We have, every year, Breakfast with Santa, board members bust the tables. And so, please, put it on your to-do list. It's a lot of fun for those, couple of hours to get out there, you're interacting with the entire community, helping out a great cause. And also, I'd like to remind the community that Breakfast with Santa is free for the community, and however, they're suggesting a donation of an unboxed toy to, in its original wrapping, to Toys for Tots with the Marine Corps.
Just confused, unboxed in original wrap.
Yeah, you
Unwrapped.
don't unwrap, sorry.
Unwrapped is what
It's
it's
a-
meaning,
yes,
yeah.
sorry.
Original packaging.
Original packaging, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay.
But my second comment about board members and volunteering is we have an appeal. We're averaging one appeal per year, I think, lately,
Mhm.
which is fantastic. That means that, things are going well. We have an appeal that is going to be scheduled in January, and we need 3 board members to volunteer. And I
Do you have a
know,
date?
There you go.
Do you have a date for it yet?
do not have a date for it
Okay,
yet. The appellant is working out what date would work for him and
Okay.
our schedule, in Sudden Valley. So,
It's gonna
or
be what,
him or
a
her, I
Thursday?
don't even know.
Probably a Thursday?
It's probably going to be a Thursday.
What
But-
is it for?
It is an appeal for something, all right? And we,
Some fine.
yes, someone has requested an appeal for a fine likely.
Okay.
So, please, I know you were interested last year and it didn't work out, but I think
It's
you
hard
right.
without a date to
Yeah,
commit.
and I don't
so-
know the date yet, that's all being worked out. However, if you were to volunteer, you would give your availability, and these are negotiated. And so, right now, there's no hard date. If you wanted to volunteer, I'm sure that, you'd be able to work with Ashley to work out an acceptable date.
Sure.
But, okay, fantastic.
Question
you.
here.
Can I volunteer, or is it strictly?
Voting, it's
Voting,
voting,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what I
sorry.
figured.
Okay.
All right, so I'll continue soliciting at the next meeting.
I may, but I honestly, I think it may be gone.
I'm asking, any further announcements?
Those were my
No
announcements.
further announcements from me, from me.
Okay, yes,
Okay, so Mitch is with family for early Thanksgiving with his kids, so he asked me to present some announcements for him. The first was that Sudden Valley has a new 5-year permit that is an exemption from the shoreline management program.
So this is final now.
Yes, and it has happened as of September 8th. The significant change in this permit is that when we can add fines, is what they're called, the unwashed tiny bits of gravel that they can put in between it that makes it a lot more solid. Because when you
In the potholes.
the
This
potholes,
is in the marina parking lot.
call Bruce right now.
Pardon me?
Call Bruce right now. Yes, so in the this is in the marina. So you fill a pothole with gravel and a car goes over it and takes it out. So this is a new method where they're able to add a much finer material that's unwashed that makes it a lot more compact and solid. So we've been able to do that. And this is all also the marina and Lake Louise Trail. The fines enable gravel to resist movement when driven over, which is what I just said. The previous permit was not as extensive or inclusive. This permit was a $500 fee to the county, and it took our staff many months to negotiate with multiple regulatory agencies, as Larry is aware. We are exercising the permit this month by filling in a depression at the marina parking lot. This allows for filling in doing maintenance on areas not to exceed the 500 square feet movable dirt. Any questions you have can be directed to Jessica Bizette. I have an actual photo of the first 500 square feet that's being blocked off for filling. So if you wanna see this, I'll pass it
Oh, so
around.
they're gonna do all the potholes within that 500 square feet?
No, they're doing 500 square feet at a time, as allowable by the permit.
So
And
each
it actually-
permit allows
Everything
500
So
square
we're,
feet,
yeah,
is there?
Yes.
but there's more than just one, that's good.
Yes, yes, they're allowed to do 500 square feet at a time.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good number.
And I do have the permit here with these conditions associated with it, so if you're interested in that, I have it as well. The craft fair is this Saturday. So, last year's craft fair was well attended and, but we didn't charge for booths and this year we did, and we're actually better attended. So we have 36 vendors so far and up to $900 has been, brought in just from, which we didn't do last year. So Andrea is the person to contact about the crafts fair. We've got kind of all hands on deck for making that happen this year. And of course, Hannah already brought up the breakfast with Santa. We do need volunteers. And I think you kind of covered that whole thing. And El Agave is once again donating breakfast. Yeah. So and here's the new thing. The rec department is actually planning a polar bear plunge for January 1st. Yes. So this will be January 1st at the marina. So the preliminary concepts for this event are bonfires, some hot cider, and possibly a drink cart with adult hot toddies served for those who are eligible. But that is actually going to happen through our rec department on January 1st. Yes, Larry.
Do you have to go in the water to get the drink?
I don't know the answer to that.
How deep do you have to go?
Do you have to get wet?
Toes in, but as
An inch is far more than I would like.
as many as you know, Lake Padden does this every year, so it's kind of a fun thing to get to do in our
Cool.
community. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I imagine it'll be pretty well attended. Board orientation, as you know, is December 1st, and that's in the dance barn starting at 10, and that hopefully is mandatorily attended. A lot of good information comes out. Our attorney shows up, our insurance broker, all the things that you know to be an effective member of the board are really important time to be there. Now, I'm sure all of you, especially Leslie, because you posted on the oil spill, the concern about there being an oil spill. On October 30th, a member of the community filed a complaint with the Department of Ecology stating a 4 by 3 foot oil puddle was discovered in Soulfield Park. Sudden Valley Security received a call immediately after the report, was sent to Whatcom County Emergency Management Division. Security notified the general manager and the fire chief, followed by the staff responding to Soulfield to locate and address the reported spill. The materials discovered were determined to be natural byproducts from decaying vegetation. The association encounters similar issues each year. The Department of Ecology was there the following day and offered to give an oil-absorbent pad to the citizen who expressed the concern. The issue is closed to the satisfaction of professionals involved and no further action is required. So I don't know if there are any other questions regarding that, but I think it's been pretty well covered. Yes, Hannah?
Why would they give an oil absorbent pad if there was no oil spill? I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate.
I think
here.
it was just to prove there was no oil.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you were to
So-
put an oil-absorbent pad and it
Gotcha.
absorbs nothing rather,
Yeah.
then it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's
So kind of
evidence
just
for
like
your
a little
eyeballs to say, yeah,
self-test.
there's exactly no
Okay.
oil, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, kayak racks at the marina are in process of being relocated. This is to clear the spit for construction. Letters went out to all the kayak owners, and calls were being made to ensure owners move their kayaks as new racks are installed before the old ones are dismantled. It's going well so far. We've been able to contact just about everybody. There are a few kayaks that are there without authorization, and so when that happens, we're just moving them on their behalf, and we're locking them up, and hopefully we'll get contacted, and we'll identify who owns them. More aggressive work begins in mid-December, and there will be an article in the Views this month, and Andrea is the person in the office to contact regarding questions.
Can you explain what you mean by more aggressive work?
That's a good question.
Is it on the spit or on the kayak
On the
racks that you just talked
spit
about?
is being referred to as more aggressive work and begins right now it's preparatory. And as in mid-December, the construction actually is full bore, and so they're going to really need to have these
So it's
things
spit work.
Right. So right now it's
It's the
preliminary.
soft armoring, I believe, it's
Yeah,
starting
yeah.
to be, yeah, okay.
And security is once again going to be providing package delivery security. So which means our security vehicles will be escorting the delivery, USPS and UPS, to make sure that packages aren't stolen from people's porches. You can't, guarantee it, but it's a deterrent. And so if any member who sees suspicious vehicles circling the community are asked to get a description, license number, so forth, and contact security.
Another question on this,
Yeah,
is it 7 days a week? Because the USPS delivers on Sunday
they do.
on contract for some of the, at least
Amazon.
UPS, I don't
I
know.
think it's Amazon.
So
That's a
are
good-
they gonna be covered on
You
Sunday?
know, I don't know the answer to that. Norm Smith would be the person to contact with regards to the scheduling of that.
It'd be nice to let the community know.
Mhm.
I don't personally need to know, but certainly if we're telling the community, your packages will be
Escorted.
escorted,
Mhm.
except on such and such a day, I mean, they need to know that.
It's a good question. I'll write that down. All right, so we are now switching our trucks over to snowplows. It's already happening. So our trucks are being switched over to snowplow and de-icer configurations. We now have 5 snowplows. Updated snowplow maps are going onto our website next week under resident resources, so you'll be able to see what those look like. The seasonal closure of Lake Louise Drive beyond Starview down to Southern Court will happen on Monday. Signs are already posted, so they have already notified the SSCV CF truck to go off-road due to icy road conditions. We already had one of our recycling trucks go into a ditch up there, so it's time to
Wow.
shut it down. And it happens
There's
yearly.
been a question about, that's a section of the road where there are no residents along there. If this is just,
But they have alternate ways to get there.
Where are we talking?
It's gate 28.
Oh, you're talking the top end of Southern Court?
Yes.
Oh, got it. Oh,
Yes,
thank
yes, yes.
goodness. Okay.
So that's being shut down for the season starting Monday, and signs are already posted,
Okay.
letting
Okay.
members know. Lastly, we are going to be selling ice melt again this year in admin. So starting December 3rd, we'll announce a price once it's negotiated with the bulk price. But generally, it's about half price to commercial sale, but we'll be offering that service to the community starting December 3rd. So that is all I have.
Can I add something on that?
You may.
And that relates to ice and nasty road conditions. I have experienced that even despite having a 4-wheel drive Jeep, I need chains. And so I would hope that it would be part of the communication to the community that they need chains.
You know, every year, I've only been here for 4 years. But I know 2 years ago we had a really huge snowstorm that caused a lot of damage to people's personal properties and vehicles. And we did put it out to the community as often as possible that chains are required and don't go out on roads, and we still ended up. Obviously they will do our absolute best to make sure that people know that our chains are required. They have ice melt. We're plowing as many roads as we've designed. But,
It brain flag.
yes.
When you drive up Mount Baker, there's a sign. Chains required from X to Y dates. Could we put up some signs saying, it make, at least at the gates, if not in the
Actually, they're
worst
not
location?
required on 4-wheel drive, excuse me.
Oh, okay. The sign doesn't make an exception.
That's a good
But-
question.
Just letting people know, especially if they live on those steep roads.
I will put that forward.
Yeah,
See if that's a possibility. Thank you. That's all I have.
I have one more.
go ahead.
Excuse me. We've just been joined by what looks to be the newest board member of our clan here.
I was gonna mention that.
Uh,
I'm assuming that you were elected and that's why you have joined us.
Yes, ma'am.
You are the chair of ACC. Okay, good.
congratulations.
Thanks.
They just had their meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it
tonight.
was a laborious one, good.
Okay, any other questions on that information? Okay, hearing none. Move on to property owner comments. Is there anybody who would like to speak to us? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Linda Bradley. I used to be up there, but not
Yes.
anymore.
Okay.
I'm
So
now
where do you live?
Division 27, Lot 82.
Okay.
So initially I came across an entry regarding what appeared to be that SBCA purchased a lot for $50,000 from a member.
Yes.
I did this when I was going through the new member list and stuff because I needed to find some divisions and lots, and I went to the assessor's website. So, looking at that, I requested the excise documents to follow up on this, and since I could find nowhere that the board had been advised of this transaction or approved the funds to be spent, the excise documents show that what's transpired was a lot swap. Leslie posted online about this, but I felt that if I wanted to talk about this, I should come here rather than discuss it on the Facebook pages. The selling price was $3,200, and yes, they traded lots. The one thing that's interesting is the lot that was traded is a far more expensive lot, $50,000 lot. It's been owned for several years. It's been actively for sale since 2015 and a couple of years before that, but not consecutively. But I guess the thing that from Leslie's description, it was like the swap was done so that this person could build a lot because they had initially wanted to do that. Well, from what I can tell, because I don't think Sudden Valley did it, the property has been placed for sale as of the 28th of September, I believe, for a $19,000 sale price. So clearly it's worth more.
That's the hillside lot, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess these are my concerns. Is the association encouraging members who are dissatisfied with being able to sell a lot they purchased with swapping for another Sudden Valley lot? 2, given that the member sits on the finance committee, is this a conflict of interest? 3, does this transaction set a precedent where an available SVCA lot isn't offered to the community as a whole to allow anyone who wants to purchase the lot to submit a bid? Wouldn't that encourage a possible actual sale rather than a swap? Clearly, the now offered lot has a greater value than $3,200. I understand that SVCA no longer wants to be in the business of selling lots. However, I do not believe that it's in the interest of the association to privately swap or sell lots without notice to the membership. I understand the lot swapped has been placed into green space by SVCA. However, not the $50,000 was paid by SVCA for the lot, and I think that's kind of the biggie that's out there right now to the membership. But rather, the actual closing cost on that lot, on the excise documents, was $895. So money was expended by us. I've seen nowhere out of our reserves where it should have come that was brought before the board and voted on. Because Leslie said that, I believe, we paid half the closing costs. So I would assume somewhere around $500 was spent. And so anyway, the $50,000 shows up, and it's hard to, I'm not quite sure why the treasurer does this, but the $50,000 shows up on the assessor site, reflects the taxable selling price, and that's the excise tax and the local taxes had to be paid on that $50,000 amount rather than the $3,200. And I think it's because you can't provide proof of the value of the lot. I don't know why, but that's their explanation. But it's encouraging from your motion that you did when you went into open session that I would hope that, first of all, you know, that it's published when we have lots that come back to us, and that they're offered to the members if they want to purchase them first, and then anybody outside of the valley, you know, developers or builders that are working in here. But I'm encouraged by that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other community comments? Yeah.
I guess I might
Sure.
comment
Come
on
on,
that.
Terry.
Yeah, I'm Terry Fisher, 16 Cold Spring Lane, resident for 37 years. And I just had to back up Linda on that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's really frustrating people around here. And we're getting this, you know, shoved down our throat, this dues increase, and there's expenditures like that that we just don't understand, you know, we don't understand the sales and expenditures and that. And, you know, I think people are gonna be held accountable from here on out. No secret deals, it's gonna have to be straightforward. I think every one of us should get the information and be able to purchase that lot if it's up for you know, up for sale. So I agree with her wholeheartedly.
Okay, thank you. Board comments?
Yes, I would like to have a board comment on
Yes.
that. I was not aware of that transaction. I find that extremely disturbing, and I believe the board should have been made aware before that transaction ever
I will
took
read
place.
to you what I wrote concerning that.
I have not received any such statement from you.
Is there anybody else? Okay. And for those who do have Facebook, there was a discussion about this, having to do with the lot at 6 Marigold Drive. 6 Marigold Drive, a Sudden Valley member who owned the property was initiating conversations with the county to build on the lot. Construction on this lot would have been problematic on several levels. It's adjacent to our lower golf parking lot and rec corridor. It's tangent to our wetlands, and it borders on the north side of Marigold on the slope of the Lake Louise Dam. Construction on this site would have likely required that Sudden Valley issue a conservation easement, and construction bordering on our wetlands is not favorable to long-term association interests. This lot is on the slope east of the dam. It's a seasonal icy road, and entering or exiting traffic from a driveway at this location would be an ongoing seasonal hazard. Taxes on this lot have been paid through 2018, and the member paid dues on the lot up to the time of the exchange, at which time they started paying dues on the hillside lot. The Hillside Place lot became association property in June of 2018 as a surrender from a member who didn't choose to continue ownership. Sudden Valley did not pay for this lot. All of the 2018 taxes have been paid, and the dues were paid current to June 2018, plus an additional 1 year's dues paid through June 2019. With the new member taking possession in November, it is collecting double dues through June 2019. When the member asked for a conservation easement, the staff was not in favor. They suggested that an alternative would be to trade the Marigold lot for the hillside lot, which Sudden Valley did own. The assessed value of the Marigold lot is $50,000. The assessed value of the hillside lot is $3,200. The trade was for a significantly smaller piece of property at a significantly less assessed valuation. In consideration for this trade and a refusal to support a conservation easement, Sudden Valley offered to pay half the closing costs. Sudden Valley made no payment to the member for the Marigold lot. It was even trade, one lot for the other. As a result of the swap, Sudden Valley has preempted a future road hazard. Building will not increase in a wetlands area, and there will be no change in dues paying membership. The 6 Marigold property will now go into common green space with, and we will no longer pay taxes on it when that is done. This exchange action has been common practice. It's used to address and resolve impacts and conflicts. One example is the trade of lots to eliminate ownership on Arrowroot Place in Gate Creek, to close the road so as to reduce our road maintenance costs. This was a no-cost exchange, but board permission would be necessary if an expenditure of funds for the purchase of the properties had been required. There may be some confusion about this information because the Whatcom County Assessor's site shows the sale price of 6 Marigold Drive as $50,000. Although this was a no-cash trade, the county will not remove this valuation until the lot has been turned into green space. They want to protect their ability to collect taxes until that time. If you want information concerning this, I do have documents here from the Whatcom Land Title to show that there was no cash exchange on this whole thing, and the real property exchange agreement, which is related to this transaction. Now, the county, if it were possible to completely wipe out taxes by my giving you a lot, who wouldn't do that? But the county says no. I'm not, that they will not allow somebody to wipe out taxes by giving or selling a lot to somebody else for $1. they will keep that property at the, assessed valuation price until we physically take it off of the tax rolls. At that point, the value will go to zero. So that's basically the rationale for the county to have done that. Okay.
Thank you for that explanation. I still find it troubling that, unlike what was done to the Arrowroot, this was not discussed. And I find it troubling that this explanation, while rational and reasonable in itself, was not provided to the board. That it went instead to Facebook. That's very troubling.
Okay. Okay. Other board comments? Okay, moving on to,
You take the, no more comments.
okay. Approval of the consent agenda,
Move to approve.
your second?
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Sorry, I'm in favor.
Okay. Okay, the consent agenda has been approved. Continuing business, one of the things, that the previous board did was to propose dates for meetings through the end of the year and agreed on it. But this board needs to ratify that information, and you'll find out on page 3. It's basically the, orientation meeting, the GM interviews on December 4, 5, and 6, and the board meeting in December. Is there a motion to ratify?
Move to ratify.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Call the question.
Yes,
I just have a comment. I
Oh,
will
yeah.
be here on the board orientation.
on the one?
On the board orientation day, I will be out of town, December 1st.
Are you talking about the interviews?
Well,
the
Board orientation.
Oh, board orientation, you're not
Yeah.
going to be here.
Yes, I will be in town on Saturday, December 1st.
Okay. All right, I would encourage all other board members to be there, especially, the new members. Okay. Okay, call the question, is there, all in favor?
Yeah, call the question. All in
Okay.
favor.
All those opposed? Seeing none? Okay. Okay, let's go to new business, and voting is necessary. We do have some treasurer's motions.
Yes, ma'am. These were all presented to the finance committee. If they all were, yeah. The first one is a request for, funds to bring our, get to the spot, to bring our golf carts up to standard. Now, just so that you are aware, the golf cart, thank you, yeah, the golf cart lease is going to be up, I believe it is in March, if I recall correctly. Typically, when the lease is up, then we replace them but here's the good news, is for $1, we get to keep those carts. And the other good news is they're in pretty good condition, yes? Our golf pro would, say that's true. So what our general manager asked him to do was to evaluate each and every cart to see what it would take to get them to good working condition. There are some that have had a significant amount of wear and tear, and some that need some mechanical repairs. But rather than replace the carts with another $80,000 lease, capital lease, as we did when we got them in the first place, the suggestion is to spend the money we need to get all of them up to a standard where we can keep them going for another couple of years. So that's what this request is about, is to request, and I'm gonna make this as a motion, $20,478, including materials tax and a 10% contingency from the SERV Capital Fund for purchase and installation of materials to extend the cart fleet 2 additional years. The Finance Committee did unanimously approve this recommendation to the board.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second, discussion?
Call the question.
Um,
Unless you have something, Madeline?
Yeah, I was just gonna make the comment that at this point, we have paid off our lease on these carts.
As of March, by March.
By March, okay,
Mhm.
but that expenditure is part of the, 2018 expense. I mean, that would have been paid in 2018 for those carts?
We will continue paying for the carts up through March of 2018, but it will only be.
19.
I mean 19.
Okay.
It will only be for, 3 months of 19.
All right, and at that point, we have decided not to go out and buy all brand new ones.
Correct.
We are going to fix up the ones that we have.
Mhm. Correct.
Okay. All right, any other comments?
The only other comment that I would add is just historical. The reason that these were leased back in the day, as opposed to having this technique applied to the old carts, is because if I recall correctly, the old carts were in far worse condition
Much older and.
than
much
these carts.
worse
These
condition.
carts are way better
They've
condition
been
than the
well cared
last
for.
time. And so last time, my understanding is that we were kind of forced into making some sort of a financial transaction to acquire new carts. This particular capital lease was the one that was chosen. This time, we have an option.
It's nice to have, the capital lease was a good way to go because it did give us this option. It's risky, because we store the carts outdoors, it's hard to say how long they're gonna last. So it was nice to have the option after 4 years to be able to take them the dollar buyout if they're in good shape and do what we're proposing to do here to extend their life for a couple of years, or if they were in rush, or if we could have started.
Right, now, the net effect of this is going to be to save the association about $60,000 rather than to start a new lease back in March and replace them all.
Over 2 years. Yeah, that's
Over a
that's
2 year
net
period,
savings
because
over 2
yeah,
years.
we're saving 2 years, so it'd be it's usually about 40,000 a year that we pay in capital lease, and so over a 2 year period, that would be 80 minus the 20 that we're gonna spend, it's a net savings of about 60,000.
Okay.
And how much more life do we think we'll get out of
2
these?
more years.
2 more. And it looks like we did bids with 3 different places then?
Mhm.
Any further comment?
A lot of the work, by the way, will be done by our maintenance staff. Yes, all of the work, like Bill is primarily going to be, Bill is our person who does all of our mechanical work and keeps all of our rolling stock going and so forth. And so this is primarily for the supplies and whatever else we need to do in order to install, fix, repair.
Call
So
the
our
question.
labor's paid for, yeah.
Call the question.
No objection, all those in favor? It looks unanimous to me. Okay. Okay, let me just hang on to this and get it to the staff, because that's what goes on there. Okay, the next item on the agenda would be another CERC request for.
Yes, the next
Richard?
item on the agenda, was to request funds to build out a new sales office for the golf department. A couple of things I wanna, first of all, let me just mention that the plan is here, we have an area, the men's locker room, I understand, I have not been in there personally to check it out,
You
but
could go late at night.
It's much bigger than the ladies' locker room.
that's what I've heard. I've been invited to go in and I just think I've declined at this point.
That's called
somehow.
ego space.
Yeah, well, maybe, but in any case, it was far larger than than was really necessary. A lot of lockers were removed and put in at the health club, to help sustain what is needed there. But there's a large corner of the men's locker room now that is unused at the current time. And right now, Brian, our golf director, plus our pro, Scott Thompson, are sharing a 77 square foot office, which makes it pretty tough to get any business done. Certainly tough to talk to people about tournaments and that sort of thing. So the intention is to take that little corner of the locker room, break through the wall, put a door in, some windows, and just make it into an additional office. Now, it could be an office for anything. And the building is very short of any offices because we're already pretty crowded in that area. But the intention for now is to use that as a place where we could have people come and talk to us about golf tournaments and whatever other events we would have going on. So the idea would be to create this little space, and it would cost us about, we've already got bids, it's $14,861. And so I'm gonna have Brian speak to this a little bit, but I'll actually make a motion now so that he can then talk to it. So I'm recommending that the board approve $14,861, including tax, design, 10% contingency from the SURF Capital Fund to build a new office meeting room in the clubhouse.
Second.
And this was discussed and approved by the Finance Committee for recommendation to the Board of Directors. Brian, what else would you like to say?
I mean, I think you covered it pretty well, but I think the idea is we have some unused space that we have to do something with. It was fortunate that we were able to take the lockers that weren't being used and move them over to the health club. So we do have this area that's unused. Since we brought Scott online, he and I have been sharing this small office. The idea, a big part of the idea of bringing Scott on board, bringing a head pro was to handle a lot of the day-to-day operations that would allow me to focus more on marketing, golf tournaments, golf memberships. We're seeing good growth on the golf membership side, so we want to be able to market those. We want to have a little space where we can meet the people to help grow those two revenue streams. In our current situation, it's difficult for us to certainly meet with anybody. We're going very close.
Well, and I noticed too, I will just say I was in there at one point, and I noticed that every time anyone went into the office, you're both interrupted.
Yeah.
And you end up both having to deal with whatever issues, and so it really doesn't make for good efficient use of either of your time.
Yeah, I think it makes, especially, we looked at different locations. The idea was that we were trying to find a separate space for me, and this space started making more sense once we started running lockers, and so it created this area that was just not being used. So it was a win-win in a sense in that it allowed us to not spend any money on lockers for the health club, which was nice, and we kind of created this opening, this space. So I think it makes good sense to do it, and will help in my efforts to increase our marketing.
Comments or questions?
Yeah. Number one, I'm wholly in favor of anything that will help market golf and increase income. And this seems to be an incredibly inexpensive investment in that effort. We probably won't know for a couple of years how well it has worked out, because marketing for golf is not a fast thing. I still think that it is a reasonable risk, particularly in light of the fact that already on SURF is a need to completely revamp the inside of the clubhouse. And this seems like a relatively reasonable first dipping your toe in the water, because once this is done, you won't have to do it over again when the rest of the interior is done. So from my perspective, you're getting two birds with one stone. You're spending money you would have had to spend, plus potentially getting an extra income from that. So I think this makes perfect sense to me.
Carol?
Well, one thing that was talked about at the Finance Committee is we've been constantly tasking Brian with the goal of increasing sales, but we've not provided him with the tool to do it. And this is, you can't very well, it's like putting him on a chair in the middle of a room and saying, okay, sell from here. It's pretty hard, and it's very crowded. So, and we won't know for a couple of years if it's been successful. But we can reevaluate it each year and decide was it right. But in any case, the room can still be used for whatever we decide once it's in there. We are very short of office space in there, and people are pretty crowded. So I do think it's a good decision to move forward on it.
Sarah?
Does this mean that he gets to share it with us?
Sure, why not?
Anytime.
Alright, call the question.
Is there any further comment? Anybody like to speak against the motion? Okay, hearing nothing, all those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, are those opposed? 1. Okay, motion is approved. Okay, moving on to the roads request.
Yep, okay, let me get there. And this is a dilemma. I don't know how many people are on Windward or travel Windward, or especially during the rain, the heavy rains. We tend to have, some significant ponding in a couple of places. And, Wilson has been looking at this situation. We have tried numerous ways of rectifying the situation. And what we've come to find is that there seems to be a lack of information about what might be causing it, because nothing we're trying is working. So the recommendation at this point is just to do an analysis. So when I look at this particular request, it says Windward drainage design. I'd like to change that to analysis. We're not going to do a design at this point in time. The whole idea is to identify where are the culverts, what's draining through those culverts, is anything draining through the culverts, are they at the right level, are they catching water and distributing it, or is it all just rushing away? We've had 3 homes, I understand, that have been affected by the water runoff or water collection, and we need to come up with a solution to this. We've made a lot of progress fixing all of our culverts, and most homes are that have been in the past plagued by extra water, have been corrected, but this is one that has not yet, and we aren't ready to make a decision on how to do it yet. We just need an analysis. So rather than do a design, we're asking for, I'm gonna make this a motion, request $10,000 from the roads capital account to fund an analysis on Windward Drive. And if you're looking at specifics, you can see from the map where it all is, but I just need a second.
Second.
Thank you. So you can see there are maps here, and it shows where the dips are. It comes at the bottom of driveways. We're not sure about where the culvert goes. You can see there's a couple of drawings here about some of the culverts they think are there, but we're not sure what goes through them yet. So all of this needs to be analyzed to determine what is the current flow of water and how can we mitigate the drainage issue. And that would be what the plan is for. So this would be one of Wilson's emergent issues that they would use, but this is a little bit more than just, we know what we have to do at this point is analyze it.
Questions? Comments? Sarah?
So how is what you're proposing different from what this letter that Wilson said they came out and did? Because it looks like they did some dye tests and they did some different things to evaluate what's going on in each piece here, so.
Yes, in a bunch of different areas, and what they need to do now is figure out how all of this plays together to actually go into the watershed system. This, evidently what they found is, at this point, is what's in here. It's a lot of information, but they need to pull it all together and come up with a solid plan as to now where do we go. Do we have to put a new culvert in? They're looking at it, but they haven't come up with whether or not that will solve it. That's what they're gonna try to do, is figure out what actually has to happen. So this isn't gonna fix anything. All this is gonna do is say, okay, now we know what needs to happen in order to fix it. And then they're gonna come back. This is not the end of it. In other words, we're gonna have to come back with a design and then a report. So it will be more, at this point, we don't wanna spend a lot of money until we know what's required. And a lot of this is at the base of the rotunda parking lots, which is also impacting it, because there's a lot of runoff from the rotunda, the hillside, the 2 driveways there. So there's a bigger, wider area that needs to be evaluated that just they haven't been able to pin down yet what's causing the issue. Yes,
Just one question, well, a couple of questions actually, kind of following on. How much did we spend to get this letter from Wilson?
oh, good question, and I'm sorry that I cannot answer that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the answer to that question. This is part of their emergent, so in other words, we have an emergent fund that is for roads and it's about between 70 and 80,000 a year. This was one thing that they came out and did to try to come up with an answer, but rather than continue down that path and trying to fix it, we're trying to analyze what's the full bore and separate it out, because I think it's gonna be more expensive than.
It's a shame that we don't have a comparison between what we paid for this versus what we're, the 10 grand that's being
Yeah,
asked for.
and I'm sorry, I can't tell you that.
I guess,
That's a great question, Larry, but I honestly, I don't think, that's not in.
with regard to the letter though, not being an engineer, my understanding is that this isn't a real proposal for what needs to be done. It is sort of an eyeball diagnosis. You walk into the general practitioner's office and he says, you got these problems, but I need to do some more tests.
That's correct, that's what
And
this is.
the 10 grand
This is like
is
doing the extra test.
is
now.
doing the extra
Yeah.
testing.
In the first paragraph of this letter, it is noted that this is simply a preliminary assessment of what appears to be the problem and some potential solutions. So this is the very first step in trying to identify the issue. And then what this motion was for was to obtain a completed analysis, which would enable us to then take the next step, which is, as the letter recommends, is go out and get bids for the work that needs to be done that we couldn't do ourselves.
Well, we're starting first with the analysis. We're
Yeah,
not at the bidding phase.
because I'm
Yeah,
confused at that.
No, he's going to the next step, we're not there
But
yet.
yeah, these are individual steps. The next step is to get the completed analysis. And then after that, figure out, based on that analysis, they're
Design
recommending,
and
Design and
build.
they're recommending in
Okay.
here, after all that, then go out to bid.
Just for point of clarification, don't we have a capital improvement plan for our culverts?
Yes, we do.
And how does this fit into
That is a really good question, and here is the issue. Though we have a plan for every culvert, and when it's gonna be repaired, and how much, and what year, and about what it's gonna cost us, these kinds of issues show up every year that we weren't prepared for. And it's because we don't know until we have a problem that there is a problem. And so these kinds of things will, rear their ugly head at some point during the year, which is why we set aside about $70,000 to $80,000 every year in the road plan to deal with those. We've had ponds developing in people's backyards, we don't know why. We fixed that one last year. All kinds of, or runoff from someone else's driveway into somebody's basement. I mean, these things happen, and they develop over time with the amount of rain that we get. A small problem becomes a bigger problem, becomes a bigger problem, and until it becomes big enough that a homeowner complains or that it gets the attention of maintenance, we just don't know about it. So this one, I have noted at least 4 times in the last season, that whole area of Windward Drive is underwater. And it's even scary to drive through because it gets to be 3 or 4 feet deep. And I think Paula next and then.
Yeah, follow.
I know we talked about this in finance committee, and I think one of the big problems, we spent a lot of time talking about this in
Yeah.
finance committee with poring over some of the pictures, and one of the issues was, well, a couple were, we don't know where some of these, some of the water is coming from and where it's going, whether or not there's even an exit for some of these areas. And so there was a lot even on the pictures from previous years, that was not defined as to how it could be getting in there, so I think that that's part of the
And
analysis.
it's getting worse each year, that's
Yeah,
kind of the
and we
challenge.
pushed back and we said we actually need to have a better idea
Mhm.
of where some of these things are coming from, if,
Mhm.
like I said, recollection serves me, because we just don't have an idea of what's working and what's not, and where the water is, how it's being routed from
And we don't
different
even know if
directions.
some of these culverts are very long,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have them go in and check and see, are they clogged? Are they even working? Are they too high to collect water? I mean, that's where our challenge is evaluating all of that, that's where the analysis piece comes from.
And even where all the water's coming from, we
Yeah.
don't have an identification of what's running into those,
Where
to
it's coming
find
from.
where it's even coming from, yeah.
Larry?
It's just a kind of a point of clarification. The problem with the word culvert is that it actually describes at least two things, maybe more. There are the big culverts, which was the original culvert renovation plan. The big culverts that carry major flows of water. Sometimes they're on a creek, and they carry water under a road. There are other big culverts too. And then there are the little culverts that generally go along a ditch from one side of a driveway to the other side of a driveway.
Under the driveway.
And they're both called culverts.
Mhm.
And the reason I said that there's at least two is this is kind of a hybrid situation. It involves some of our official culverts, but it also is along the side of the road, and it may involve people's driveway
It
culverts too.
may also involve ditches, which we don't know what the ditches, role is in this, and, you know, a lot of people, I don't know what's happening at, the rotunda, but a lot of people have filled their ditches, with the idea that they're gonna make a parking space, or they're going to, plant it, you know?
Whatever.
Which is very nice, but it doesn't, it defeats the purpose of the ditch. So these are all things that they need to assess and find out what is the impact of each of these areas, and that's why the analysis.
Call the question?
If there's no more, discussion, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, unanimous.
Okay, that is,
That's it on
I
that,
guess
okay.
somewhere in here I have a request to approve my, oh, there, later on. Never mind.
Okay.
I knew it was there, I'd seen it. Thank you.
All right, the next thing we're going to look at is some documents that we will be using for our, committees. And page 22 is the first one. On this process for applying to be a volunteer. Let's see.
Well, I'm sure I've
Oh,
seen
that's
that.
the checklist, 22 and 3. Yeah, and it's, it is the process for, signing up to be a volunteer, and then this, on page 23, is a checklist. Now, when each of the committees has been approved, we will review this, and all of these, requirements are not necessary for all committees. And, it'll be up to, the board to sit down with the chair and say, okay, you know, they all have to be vetted. Some of these are yes/no questions. Provide a charter for board approval. Well, we don't have to do that for the standing committees, so that would be a no on that one. Confirm that the committee has a, posts 48 hours prior to the meeting and decide when, and all of these things are, is the board comfortable with this list of options, or is there something you'd like to change? Right.
Yeah, you mentioned the notice prior, it says 48,24.
Right.
I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, and also, well, we'll just leave it, what does that mean, 48 paren 24 paren?
Okay, yeah, I believe that we need to post 48 hours prior, so I also would like to remove that.
Remove the 24?
Remove the 24, yeah.
Okay, all right. At 48, unfortunately, I have no cell reception in here, so I can't get it my copy of the bylaws, I'm pretty sure that most committees have a 48-hour.
Standing committees, I'm sure they do, but when you have a committee chartering,
Pretty sure that the committee section, maybe Eric has a copy, the committee section, I'm pretty sure is specific with regard to prior notice and agendas. And my recollection is that prior notice is 48 hours always, but that agenda is not required, that it is recommended for all committees.
okay. Eric, what do you see?
Sure, under the general committees, notice of operation here. Notice of each meeting shall be posted pursuant to, it says section VI three, but it means article VI three, document review committee. Take a note.
Oh, make a
No.
note, another friggin' typo.
Normally including an agenda.
Yeah,
No.
normally.
Now, notice in article, 5, or I'm sorry, article 6, section 3.
I think that's just how you publish.
That's right. It doesn't have any requirement for time.
Right, that's just the physical act of
Yes.
publication. What does that require?
It says, it would be posted just like, let's see, posted at the association principal office and on an appropriate association webpage as may exist.
So, I don't have a problem with confirming, I just don't know that you need to say. You can just say, all committees have a 48-hour notice requirement. And no committee is actually required to post their agenda, the next bullet.
Right.
But all committees are encouraged
Encouraged, I
to
would
post
say,
an
then.
agenda.
Okay.
And with those two changes, I'd be fine on those two particular bullet points. I do have one other concern. And that is the very, well, two more down. I'll go ahead and comment on Robert's rules. I highly agree that Robert's rules is very flexible. It's not, I have a very thick book, but it says when you're dealing with a small committee, you can be very, very flexible. That's very explicit in there. The next point, though,
So what you're
requires,
suggesting is that we remove the yes, no,
the yes, no off of that, absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Sorry, I wasn't clear enough. The next bullet point, I'm not sure what's going on here. Are required to provide an annual report. Well, all committees are required to provide an annual report. But the bylaws do not say that the board president will describe and set the depth and context of materials, and I don't even know what materials is referring to here. I presume that's supposed to mean regarding the annual report. But again, that's not clear, and I don't know where this whole clause about board president telling a committee chair how they should run their committee or how they should report to whoever they report. Because some reports to the board, some report to the community as a whole. Standing committees report to the community as a whole. The other committees report to the board. So I have questions and concerns about that. Question, where did it come from? What's intended? What is meant by materials? And why are we doing it? That's the concern part.
Okay, it's not clear. I didn't write this was provided by staff, so.
Okay.
I would say remove that entire,
The bullet.
the entire bullet, because annual reports are something that are required in each,
For each
charter.
standing committee, but
right.
but it
And
depends on the
those-
charter, so we will check
That's right.
that tonight as we go through the charters.
And so if the charter doesn't already have that included, then we could as a board say, hey, we'll charter you if you include that.
Right, okay?
But-
My question is back to the committee general. My understanding, again, not being able to look at the words, my recollection is that the general committee requirement is that all committees have an end of the year report.
That's my understanding.
And so this wouldn't need to say ask, it just says everybody is required to file an annual report, period, boom, end of statement. So that at least the chair knows that they're required to do that without having to read the bylaws to figure it out. But all the rest just doesn't need to be said.
I can clarify that.
Please do.
Geez. Hold on.
We're in recording business right now.
Yeah, I accidentally touched something on the
Uh-oh.
screen here. Yeah.
You can turn this
I
off.
heard that.
Technology. Somebody's got reception.
Okay. Sorry about that. Back to the question about general committee operation. It doesn't say anywhere anything about the final report.
Okay.
It does, however, say that the minutes need to be filed, and I didn't see that on the checklist.
Okay, then we definitely need to add minutes if it's in there.
Okay.
And pardon me for misremembering the bylaws. That was my recollection,
Yeah.
but perhaps it was just our general practice.
Well, I'm sure that that is included on all of the standing committees, so we will,
Yes.
as we review each one of the charters, just.
Well,
go through that.
however, generally, it does say may be established pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order, which Robert's Rules of Order do say you give an annual report.
Okay.
Ah,
Okay.
yeah, well, that would be my suggestion, is to just tell all committee chairs,
Okay.
you have to file an annual report, period. End of sentence. And minutes too, another bullet. That's all I have, thank you.
Anything else?
I think on bullet number 3, we had determined earlier that it's a
Mhm.
volunteer harassment policy, so to
Right.
change the wording on that.
Remove that.
Good catch, thank you, ma'am.
I have one, the notification of no contract authority letter from each member. Do we have a copy of that?
Yes, that is included,
I thought I saw it.
yeah. Page 32.
I don't remember this letter from January. But the only association member authorized to bind the association to any contractual obligation is the general manager, or when the general manager authorizes.
Right.
Isn't the
This
board?
is, sign a contract,
Mhm.
yeah, I
I
suppose.
think we've done a couple of those.
Okay, all right, well, let's address that when we get
Yeah.
to it. But that is information, I believe, that should be
Yes.
provided to committees, that they are not authorized to sign contracts themselves, that has to be brought to the board or the general manager.
Could we, just going back, could we make that another bullet point in here? And maybe drop the letter, since the letter has some odd wording.
I'm sorry, what? Another,
This letter,
Yeah.
it says no contract authority,
Right.
make that part of these bullet points.
it is
It's number
the
2.
second bullet point,
Ah, okay.
yeah.
Super, then there's nothing. I would just suggest
Okay.
dropping this letter,
Okay,
because I
All right,
also think it's
Yeah.
worded kind of oddly.
May I speak to that?
Please.
I know the purpose behind it is because they want to make certain that anybody volunteering on a committee is not going to engage Sudden Valley in a contract without approval.
Absolutely.
And it has happened in the past.
The only qualm is the wording in this paragraph. The only association member authorized to bind the association is the general manager.
okay,
So-
now you're referring to the letter
Yeah.
itself,
It needs-
now we're just dealing with
Yeah,
the
we
the
just need
list.
to, we need
Yeah.
to deal with that letter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get to that
Okay, all right.
in turn. Okay, all right, so we do agree that these are kind of the rules of engagement for,
I think it's a
Committees.
great checklist,
okay,
good stuff.
and with the suggested
Oh,
changes.
I have one more suggestion, I'm sorry. Did we drop that, the annual report
No,
bullet, agreed with the BOD president of depth and context?
That
of
portion,
the-
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah, we
period
crossed that out and
report.
added instead of
Okay.
the minutes,
right. And,
requirement to publish minutes.
And at the very end, it says, all yes or no decisions rest between the chair and the BOD president.
Okay,
Is that,
Yeah,
we're giving authority to the president as a board right now to do that?
That's interesting, I'm just not
Okay.
sure what the point is.
What, looking at each of these that has a yes, no after it, do we really want to give an option, or this is just, this is the way it's going to be? The first one being provide a charter, I mean, that's,
Right.
you know, there will be, okay. So if you look at this from a committee standpoint, yes, there will be a charter. If you're looking at an ad hoc task force, do they need a charter, or do they simply need direction from the board of what their job is? And I think that's why this one was put in as yes, no.
Could be, but I would argue that what
Okay.
you just described is in fact a charter. It's very clear that task forces are not permissible, that all we have is committees.
Right,
That's all we get. We
But
have in the
these are-
past used that phrase, and that's been inaccurate.
okay. But what the function of this is to perform a short-term job.
No quibble about
And in doing
that.
that, do we need to have a charter for that? And I say no, that we just need direction from the board, this is what your deliverable is, and this is the date.
I misunderstood you, I
Yeah,
think that's totally correct, because that, in my mind, is the charter.
Okay,
Their task, their goal, what the board told them to do, that's their charter.
but they don't have to come up with a written one that's approved by the board, because the board is telling them what the charter is.
I do have one last question. It says established time and place of meetings. What does that mean? Does that mean
The-
regular time and place?
Right, the communication committee will meet every, Wednesday, the third Wednesday, and it's just at this location.
And so staff is gonna actually take on the responsibility of confirming that there's no conflict in those things?
Yes.
Okay?
And
Okay,
again, if you
yeah.
throw in the,
Can I add the word regularly established in front, instead of just established, just because
Okay.
that's the idea, is to
Okay.
make something known far in advance.
okay. And these are the things that are not necessary for your ad hoc committees, as
That's
I
right.
said, you know, because they will meet, as needed.
As the-
Um,
yeah.
And one of the things that happens, because if you have a regularly established time and place of meeting, is you are considered to have given notice by doing that.
That is certainly
Now,
correct
it's a
for the
courtesy that we
board.
go forward and we give additional notice, but it's, you know, if it's a regular meeting, then we don't have to give specific notice.
I'm quibbling only to the extent that I know that is absolutely correct for the board. The board does not have to publish advance notice or even an agenda, does not have to,
Right.
for a regularly scheduled meeting. I'm not sure how that
But we will
applies.
continue to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's it's good politics, it's
Yes.
good communications to the community. With regard to other committees though, I'm not sure if the bylaws, give that kind of flexibility to other committees who are, or that are regularly scheduled. And I would suggest that maybe we don't want to give them that much freedom. If the board's not gonna use the freedom that it has, because it's not good communications for the community, why should we give that option to the other committees? We should just tell them, you get 48 hours notice, and you don't have to do an agenda, but we urge you to do an agenda.
Okay. All right. Okay, Carol?
Can we just remove all the yes, nos? I just
Yeah.
feel like we make this the checklist. That's it. Whether the yes, no is not an option. If there's a question, then
Right.
they can absolutely chat with someone and say, hey, do I have to? And we can make that decision at the time.
Okay.
I'd go with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, with the changes that we have suggested, this will be part of the instruction that's given to committee chairs. Okay, so the next thing that is, needs to be shown to all committee volunteers, as well as the chairs, is the discrimination and harassment policy procedures for volunteers, which begins on page 24, which has been previously approved by the board, so I mean, this thing is in force. This and no authority to sign contracts and the code of conduct, I suggest that instead of insisting that members sign them, they be given a sheet of paper that says, I have been shown this information, so that they are aware of it, and if they choose not to, if they want to sign the document itself, they may do that, but if they don't want to, it's simply, I have been shown this information, and I do, understand that this is what's expected of me, but I choose not to sign it. Well,
I agree with that, because very often if you have to sign the document, you have to surrender it to give it to someone.
Yeah.
And then they don't have it as a reference, and I would rather see, just a signature that said, I've received a copy of this.
yeah,
So that's what they do in the doctor's offices when they
exactly,
give
and
you
that's
your,
what, yeah.
a HIPAA policy, you
The
know.
only comment I have is that this whole process, as good as it is, it makes tons of sense, especially for chairs. For regular volunteers, while they ought to be automatically given the harassment policy,
Right.
it sounds kind of overkill and maybe scary, maybe frightening people from wanting to volunteer. It's tough enough to get volunteers to fill out the short paperwork that we have already. So it's just a
Well, again, if you
consideration.
just give it to them and say,
Oh.
here, sign this, that you received it.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't,
Could
require
that-
anything
I don't know,
legal.
could it just be, rather than a separate piece of paper, could that be part of the application form? It says volunteer application form? And,
Because you're
No,
not giving
because
it
you
to
have
them
to be
until after
accepted
they've
as a
been vetted and
volunteer
Okay.
accepted.
first,
okay.
and then hand out, these papers to them afterwards.
I think these are good ideas, I'm just concerned about overkill.
Yeah,
I think it's up to the chair to, sorry, I think it'd be up to the chair to kind of
yeah.
manage that process. I don't see a problem, I think people will be fine with
I
it.
just want to let
It's just
people know that there's
informing
an
people.
expectation of behavior,
Mhm.
and it really is up to them what they do.
Mhm.
But we have these approved documents that people should really be aware of.
I would think they'd be comfortable with knowing that these policies are in place.
Like I say, absolutely hand them the policies, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, the other, thing is there is the harassment policy has been included here simply for your information because we've already approved it. There's no real discussion we need to have on that. On to the authority to sign contracts on page 32. Is there discussion on that?
I'll go back to my point, again, I love the letter, I know why it was written, I quibble with the wording. The GM is not necessarily an association member. And I'm not even sure why association member even needs to be written. It's just the only person, or the only entities that can bind are the GM and designee and the board.
I could simplify that.
Yeah, please.
By statute, no committee has authority to sign contracts or enter or have budgetary control unless they are a committee that the board or the community has said can be a committee of action. We don't have any of those.
But they could be created.
Well, they could, but we don't have any, so
Okay,
we
Carol?
could simply say you can't spend money.
I think that this form needs to be just the first paragraph. The purpose of this letter is to inform all Sudden Valley Community Association volunteers and committee member that no member has authority to sign or otherwise enter into any contract or other agreement binding or committing the association to obligation, acquisition, service, purchase, lease, or other agreement, period.
So you're saying strike
Just
out
strike
other
out
than the general
rest of it.
manager?
They don't have to know who does.
From what you read and what Leslie just asked,
Yes.
you're striking out the clause other than the general manager from that first
Yeah,
paragraph.
I mean,
Okay.
they don't need to know who has
Right.
the authority, whether it's board member or
You
general
don't.
manager. You don't, you just
Right,
don't. That's all I think you need to say.
Could
And the
we
thing-
add after member the word volunteer? Member volunteer or volunteer member, something along those lines?
It does say volunteers and committee members.
Because, I mean, board members are members of the community. they can't do it individually, they do it as the board as a whole. So, would that be acceptable?
Volunteer members, is that what you're saying?
Something like that, member, volunteer, somewhere, okay?
Okay.
Did we say get rid of the whole second paragraph?
And the whole second
Yeah, and then the
paragraph,
whole second one's go.
I just say make it a form, not a letter, and a sign at the bottom.
Well, let's be sure that we don't prevent members from something like the events committee who needs a budget in order to pay for breakfast with Santa or something like that. It does not preclude their ability to spend money where it's been, allocated.
where it's
But-
been allocated and appropriated
But
by the
not a
board in
contract
advance.
that,
It's
yeah,
not a
that does that, yeah.
Yeah.
And do we feel that we have allowed the latitude that they need without,
It's very specific to contracts.
yes,
And
right,
so
okay.
here's a question, along those lines. There was the July 4th event, and there were tents
Right.
and bands and all sorts of stuff. So contracts did have to be entered into with regard to that.
Yes.
Those kinds of things, in my mind, ought to be under the GM,
That's a
not
staff,
under
that's a
the
staff
committee
function,
that might
right.
be
Exactly,
doing that stuff. And how was
They
it done?
were. Any
Yeah.
agreements that were made with the vendors were done through, staff.
And that should be the way that it is, and that, I think, gives enough flexibility to any committee, to say, hey, we need 10 grand to do blah, 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 and if the board agrees, fine, but the GM signs the contract.
And we much prefer that any expenditures from committee events go through, rather than reimburse people for their personal expenses, because that's what we have a budget for.
You have a control that way, if you're reimbursing, or if you're letting people run off and do whatever they
We
want,
don't wanna do that.
it's, there's no control.
Okay, all right, so we do wanna make some changes to this. Any general consensus of what we're suggesting is acceptable? Okay, all right, okay.
I don't see a code of conduct.
I don't see code of
No,
conduct.
no,
Uh-oh.
because,
There's a discussion.
yeah, what I'm proposing is, now, there was a code of conduct approved, a year and a half ago or something like that.
February of
Yeah, I got that
17.
copy of it here. Okay, I
That
have
sounds
that.
about right.
Generally, yeah. And what it basically states, as a member of the board or committee, I agree to uphold the code of conduct for board and committee members as adopted by the association. I will conduct myself by the following model of excellence. Recognize the worth of all individuals and appreciate their individual talents, perspectives, and contributions. Help create an atmosphere of respect and civility where other board and committee members, other association members, and staff are free to express their ideas and work to their full potential. Conduct my personal and public affairs with honesty, integrity, fairness, and respect for others. Respect the dignity and privacy of all association members and partners. Keep the common good as my highest purpose and focus on achieving constructive solutions for the benefit of the entire membership. Avoid and discourage conduct which is harmful to the best interests of the association or its members. I affirm that I have read and understand the Sudden Valley Community Association Code of Conduct. Okay. This was approved, the date that Eric gave, which is about a year and a half ago, by all of the, following on members of this committee. And the only ones who have not signed it or have not approved it are the new members of this committee. So, give me your thoughts on something like this. I mean, there's no, it's not heavy-handed. It's simply saying, we will respect one another, the community, our staff, and work together to accomplish what we all need to get done. Right.
As we discussed, back in those days, whenever it was February of that year, there are no real teeth to this.
Right.
But we were advised by council that we really shouldn't put teeth in it, that can be used as a weapon, and it's not appropriate to use as a weapon. that it's just a reminder that we want people to know. And I think it's perfectly fine to apply. I don't think the board signed it, but the board approved it, and it would probably be a good thing to have during the orientation.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to bring this around before the orientation, so that
Yeah.
we could,
Unless somebody wants to revisit it and learn it, which I don't think there's a need, personally, I don't think there's a need to. Unless that, then that should be just given to every volunteer in the community, including board members.
okay.
And ACC members too, by the way. Guys.
Didn't Rich Davis get involved in this and say, don't sign this?
I don't remember.
I
if
don't
you did.
remember that, but I mean, I think this is one of the things that I would also like to put on this list. I have a sign that says, I have been given a copy of this. Don't sign
Sign,
the
I have been
code.
given a copy.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
there's that's a compromise.
Yeah, I recall Davis saying that we shouldn't get in a position of requiring signature to the code of conduct, and that's,
Yeah.
I think that's why the signature lines were deleted from the bottom.
The code of conduct that we currently have, which Leslie just read, it had this optional signature area.
Yeah.
So, maybe, I would agree with his suggestion, I agree with your comment. Don't sign it, sign that you have received it.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any objection to this? No? Okay.
I move we adopt and apply to, and give to, all volunteers pursuant to the approval of the board,
Okay.
when it was approved, whatever year that was.
Shouldn't be just volunteers, it should be those elected as well.
We are volunteers.
We are volunteers, every single one of us. We,
Yes.
no
We
matter
get
what.
volunteer
Unless
twice.
you get a paycheck.
Hey,
Is there a
hey.
Second.
second? Okay.
God, don't start a rumor like
I
that.
didn't
I
say
got enough
anything.
problems.
I didn't say anything, I just made a noise.
Okay, any further comments or changes you'd like to make, or are we good? All those in favor?
So I have a question.
Sure.
So we're just approving the code of conduct, or we're approving all three
Just the code of
documents we
conduct,
just went
right
through?
now. That's
Just
the only-
to actually, not approving the conduct, it's been approved.
Yeah.
We're approving, giving it to all volunteers and,
Okay.
and adding that to the list of things that they agree that have been shown.
Okay, Sarah?
So I guess I don't understand what the difference is with this and all these other documents we just went through. Why are we voting on this and not the others?
Yeah, we didn't vote on the
Okay,
others.
we didn't vote on
just
the
discussed.
harassment thing, because we've already done that.
Mm.
That's just for information. But the list of,
The checklist
Let's
under
see,
the
the
ordinance.
checklist.
We didn't vote on anything. We just have been going through it, so I don't know
Well,
why
you
we're
know,
voting.
that's a good point, Sarah.
She's right.
Yeah. Maybe we should
what would
vote
you
on it.
like to do?
Well, I think we should be consistent, either not vote on any of them or vote on all of them.
Okay, would you like to make a motion or amendment?
Yeah, because I can certainly withdraw mine. I'll just withdraw mine. Here,
Okay.
gone.
Okay. Okay, so would you like to make a motion, Sarah?
No,
You
no,
wouldn't?
I don't wanna make a motion. I'm
then-
happy with the process we're going through. I don't wanna vote on every single one of them.
No. I'll
I'm
make a
not sure
motion.
where.
Okay, what do you
There you
wanna
go.
do?
I move that those documents that we've just discussed be made part of the volunteer packet and provided to volunteers, as an informational piece,
With them to sign that they've received.
that they've received it.
Okay, with that caveat, I will second that motion.
Okay. Now is there discussion on that? And the three documents I'm assuming are the checklist, the contract, the
Harassment.
authority to sign
All
contracts.
four
Oh,
things.
Yeah, all of the documents.
Okay,
Okay,
all of the
we just
documents, okay,
discussed.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's all four. Any comments on any of them, or the process, or anything like that?
Call the question.
Without objection? We'll vote on the motion. All those in favor? It is Is unanimous, okay. Okay, good.
Thanks, Sarah. That
We
that
have a
was good.
process.
Catch, good catch.
Moving on to our, committee reports. Committee reports, well, it's not
No.
reports, it's a, okay, let's start by
How about status? We call it status.
whatever it is.
Yeah,
we're moving on
whatever.
to it. The first committee would be the communications committee. I would entertain a motion to approve Eric Trower as the chair of the communications committee.
I'll move, so move.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? We seem to be unanimous on that. Eric, you're now the chair. Would you like to present our charter?
I would move that this charter be adopted by Sudden Valley for the year 2019 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I only have one question. Who wrote this and did the committee approve it?
Yes and yes. I wrote it.
Ah, there we go. The first one was not a yes or no question. The second one was.
Yes.
Okay, so you wrote it and they looked at it and they liked it.
Yes,
Okay?
Are there any changes from last year?
there are. One change. In the meeting and procedures, I believe. I'm sorry, in section 1, membership. Names of committee members shall be recommended by the committee to the Sudden Valley Board for approval. That was the only change.
Is that an addition or what?
That makes it more consistent with other standing committees.
Yeah,
Just,
I mean,
so
this-
that the flow of volunteers is standardized.
Okay.
Okay.
And I guess the only question that I have is based on council's advice that we really don't need 2 directors on every committee. So are you guys really wanting 2 directors?
We didn't discuss removing that. It worked well in the past, and the reason for that we wanted to have at least 2 directors. We certainly don't want 5 directors, which accidentally happened at the last month of this year. Thank you, Andrew.
That wasn't his fault.
Don't blame me, it's okay.
Yeah.
And so we had to make sure that somebody didn't show up. But a quorum has to have at least 1 director. And so if there's ever an event where there's not.
So you would like to have 2 then?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
okay.
to.
Make that easier.
Okay, yeah, given the quorum definition, that
Yeah.
makes some sense. Okay, all right, sure, thanks.
Okay. Any further comments?
Who's the other director on communication?
Other director that has, Andrew. is one.
Mike D'Angelo?
Mike D'Angelo.
Hannah?
I'm on.
And I'm asking Leslie to not be on.
I agree.
It already sounds like there's 6 or 7 or 8, I don't know.
Well, what had been approved at the previous meeting was that all current members would be continuing members.
Mhm.
And so that was the list that was presented for.
So remind me again, what you should just read off, who are the board members who happen to be there, and which
Yeah.
one of them is the actual number 2 director?
Mike, is it?
Mike had wanted to be,
Or Andrew?
but I would prefer Andrew at this time to get him,
Yeah.
As the number 2?
yes.
Okay.
All right, let's approve the charter, and then we can go on to the members.
Sounds good.
Is there, without objection, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. What would you like to present to us, the list of members for this committee?
The members that have requested to continue on the committee are Rob Gibbs, Hannah Oliphant, Summer Cronk, Mike D'Angelo, Andrew Entrican, Judy White, Ann Gray, David Narcico, Paula Birchler, Sharon Washington, and Tara DeVoe.
Have they all been approved?
They have.
Okay. Are you moving to?
I would
approve?
move that these be the initial members of the committee for 2019.
I lost track of how
So
many
there's
board members.
five?
I think there were 5 board members on it.
No,
Hannah doesn't count, I mean,
Yeah.
does Hannah count? As
But
a-
she's non-voting
She's not
board
voting.
member, so it's not as important, because she can't vote anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Paula
So Paula,
and Andrew
Eric,
and Mike and,
Andrew, Mike,
okay.
or Eric.
Yes.
Paula, Andrew,
Paula, Andrew, Mike, and me. Yes.
Paula, Andrew, Mike.
David is
Okay,
no
so
longer
that's
a
four.
board member.
Yeah. That's 4, okay.
Okay. These members have all been vetted.
Yes, they have all been vetted.
Comments, questions? Let's call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do we have a rule or a thought about making sure we don't have quorum of board members on any one committee, so we'll limit it to 4 voting board members? Is that kind of the idea? Is that a rule? Is that?
We don't have any rule, but this does not violate it if we had that rule. So we can think about that for a future meeting if you'd like to put that on the agenda.
One, as I mentioned previously, we accidentally had 5. And so, the reason that I said that that was an accident was because the perception that you could have a board quorum at some committee meeting, I think is a bad perception to have. And so, when Andrew got appointed, and suddenly we had on the committee 5 members of the board, 5 voting members of the board. And, so we had to make sure that that was dealt with right away, just for perception.
The only thing I'd add to that is I have spoken with Eric about getting involved in the web subcommittee. I don't know how to do that without being a member of the communications committee.
Yeah.
And that would make me number 5, and I don't wanna do
You
that.
have to be a member of the main committee to be a
Yeah,
member of any
subcommittee.
subcommittee.
Okay, then I can't do it.
Is that per our bylaws?
That's,
No.
Or is
actually,
that-
that's,
No.
Oh,
Robert's rule.
Yeah, Robert's rules
Robert's
with
rules.
regard to subcommittee, yeah.
I think it's, I mean, not that we could do anything about it, but I know, I think that hinders some volunteerism on subcommittees.
Well, no, I would argue that it shouldn't, because to be on a subcommittee, let's say that you only wanted to be on the, communication, web development subcommittee.
Web development.
Then you would join the main committee because you have to be vetted. You don't want non-community members to be on any of these
Right.
subcommittees. And appointed and agreed by the board. And so you're on the committee, doesn't mean that you have to attend every committee meeting.
Well,
That's
so
what
you're
Maybe
saying,
we
but
should
you
do a
could-
better job in putting that information out there, because I've heard from people in the community that feel like they wanna be part of a subcommittee of something that's going on that they feel passionate about or wanna get
Mhm.
involved in, but they don't feel like they can commit to a committee and a subcommittee. So maybe that's something that
Yeah,
we can do a better job, educating the
It's-
community about.
and I'd love to add to that there is no reason in the world why non-members can't volunteer and offer assistance. They can't be a committee member
Right.
or even a subcommittee member, but their assistance is absolutely encouraged. And so I suppose I could offer my services to the web subcommittee without being a member. Just, hey, I'll volunteer some stuff,
Right.
but leave me off the committee work, because I don't wanna violate this 5-person thing.
Right. Also,
And that could be for any renter or anybody else, but that's part of the education.
well,
Yeah,
and also,
I'm gathering some information here, again, for the future. It's not probably in January sometime, we'll bring this back as to, how we would like committees to operate.
Good input.
Okay, so we do have a list of members and we do have a motion on the floor. Is there any further comment? All those in favor of these members? And any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Moving on to
thank you.
the document review committee. The document review committee, we are not asking for a charter because it is a standing committee, and therefore the first thing we need to do is I would entertain a motion to name Larry Brown as the chair of the document review committee.
I make a motion to name Larry Brown as the chair of the document review committee.
Second.
Okay? Comments? Hearing no comments, I will accept that by Carol.
Yes, please, call the question.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Larry, you do not have to give us a charter, but
Yeah.
have you got some members?
Actually, I have some ideas, and they're basically the members who were on last year, who, not all of which have given me an indication that they're interested. So I will only name the one who I know has offered an indication, and that is Eric.
Okay.
Now, the others who I will invite, just for information
Okay,
purposes.
That's fine, just give that to us at the next
Okay,
meeting,
fine.
okay?
I don't need to
That's
tell you
fine.
tonight.
Okay, Eric's, has been nominated, I believe that he's been vetted.
Not certified.
Okay, is there any objection? Okay, that's just by acclamation, Eric will be a member. Does the document review committee require, 2 board members?
Not to my recollection.
Yes,
It might,
it does.
okay.
2 board members, 1 acting as chair, and at least 1 additional association member.
Okay, so that was where the minimum was. It's a very, it need only be very small, but I have
Okay.
more than 3 names in mind.
Okay, moving to emergency preparedness, that would be,
Mike, but he's not here.
okay, we can still say.
But I'm here and I
Okay,
do
can I,
belong.
can I ask someone to nominate Mike as
Yes, I
chair?
would like to nominate Mike D'Angelo as chair.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Thank you.
with no objection, we will accept him by acclamation. So would you like to present the charter now?
Yes, the charter is, attached here on pages 34 and 35 and 36. I will tell you that the changes are primarily dates, and so there hasn't been any other change in the previous charter. And then also on page 36, there's been some changes in the committee members. We had some people who moved out of town, they're
Let's
still
approve the
volunteers.
charter first, if we can
Oh,
do
yeah.
that, and then we'll go to committee members.
Okay.
Is there,
Move to approve the charter.
Second,
is there any comments on any of their charter?
by acclamation.
None, I accept that by acclamation.
Okay.
Let's move on to the members of the committee.
All right, so I don't wanna go with the members that are on here, I'd rather go with the members that are on our additional sheet here, and I want to, just say that we should add Sharon Wash Amon, she is also a member
She's
of the
listed,
committee, has been.
she's listed
Yeah.
under staff.
Sorry,
She's listed under staff.
I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, she's listed under staff on the committee members?
Yeah, this page 36 is a
Okay.
little.
Oh.
But
Why don't we
she's
look at
going
this
on
No,
the
I know, but I'm
Page that was
suggesting
given.
don't
to
look
ignore
at
it.
that, look
Okay.
at this
Yeah.
page
So look at
instead,
this.
yeah.
And there's a
And
list
add-
of
and-
members here, would you
So
like to read
first of
those?
all, yeah, I'll name, and I wanna change William Walsh is Wash, it's not W-A-L-S-H, it's W-A-S-H. Okay. And yes, they're married. So we have Penny Bamford, Owen Bamford, Ruth Evans, William Wash, Grace Schaffner, Henry Renteria, Kathleen Laughlin, Alina Reynolds, David Lilly, Jim Anderson, although I haven't seen him in 6 months, but he's still on, Frank Priscilla, Sharon Wash Amon, and then I am the additional board member
Okay,
at this point.
so you're moving that around?
I'm moving that those
Okay,
people
is there a
be
second?
approved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Call the question.
Hearing no objection, with no objection, all those in favor of this membership list? That's unanimous, okay. Okay, so the next one we have, Finance Committee?
Yep. So, Paula Birchler, I'm chair as
yes,
treasurer.
according to the
by the
bylaws,
bylaws.
the treasurer becomes the chair of the finance committee, and it is a standing committee, so there's no charter required. So tell us about the membership.
So the finance committee has a limited number of people who can be on the finance committee. The maximum is 7. I've had a request for each position. Paula is actually going to be our other board member on the finance committee. And then, Karen Borchert, Colin Morrow, Penny Carter, and Tony Lozale, are the additional ones, and I have one more who will be coming up in a few months, but not yet, so. I'm holding
So
that
for the
position.
moment, you're having 6.
So for the moment, I'll have 6, which is acceptable. I can have as few as 5 and as many as 7. So these are the people I'd like to put forth and submit for the finance committee.
Okay, so that's a motion to accept these people?
Sorry?
A motion to accept those?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
yes.
Is there a second?
So,
Okay,
second,
a second.
Mhm.
Discussion?
call the question.
Okay, with no objection, all those in favor? It's unanimous, okay. All right, coming up to nominations and elections. Again, this is a standing committee, we're not here to approve memberships or anything, but tell us who the members are who were elected and what you've done to fill the vacancies.
The elected members are Anne Green, Sharon Wash Amen, and myself. I put out, I believe, one on Facebook, just regular. We need 5. I haven't done anything official yet. I was planning to do that today.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Ask staff to post it, please, on the
Will do.
website, yeah, okay.
And Christine Hurst has been vetted and approved, and I have her paperwork.
Okay.
So,
All right, so there's one seat that you,
yes,
you
one seat
you believe you
open.
have.
I do have
okay.
one seat open.
All right, and you have attached here also the certification of the AGM,
I do.
the final certification. The list of who was elected, and the ballots, and my special favorite is page 39, where you do count all of the ballots and what category everything was in. I just wanted to know, total ballots not counted. People always are asking, why weren't ballots counted? And I'm seeing here that some of them were returned late,
Mm-hmm.
some of them had no signature, some of them were invalid. The ballots were returned that they were undeliverable,
Yes.
and discrepancies of all sorts. So out of 1,300 returned, there were 64 that were not voted, really.
Yes.
Any other problems that we should note?
I actually have 3 more ballots in my mailbox right now. They came in, yeah.
Wow.
So those are those.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was 22 late plus 3.
Yes. And those came in just this past
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
Okay, and we do have the statements here from the post office stating when they were mailed and how many. Okay, and the master tally sheet from the master counter. So does everything seem to be in order? Sir?
I have a question, I was just looking at these, page 42 and 43. The top very right says processed by RRW on 9/29/17. What is that, and why is it 17?
I can answer that.
Okay.
This is a template that is used by the post office. If you look at the bottom, it does say 2018.
Oh, it's just part of their template on
Yeah,
the
it was
form.
obviously
Okay.
just an oversight on their behalf.
Okay, okay,
All the other data is actually correct.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so Kennedy has fulfilled their responsibility to provide a report to the board at the next regular board meeting.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay, and then our last committee, Parks, Trails, and Recreation. First is approved committee chair, and I believe we do have 2 chairs for that committee, is that true?
That was what was meant. There were 2 that voiced that they wanted to be, but if you look, we have 1 director that's listed under her.
Oh,
Okay,
if I can interject.
yeah,
At the inception of this committee, about 2 years ago, yeah, just after 2
Yeah.
years ago, it was co-chaired by 2 community members, and with 2 board members representing the committee to the board. And so that was what they we're intending to continue, and
Well,
so,
there have been some changes throughout that too. It went from
Yes.
Parks and Trails to bring in the recreation
Right,
and
and
everything,
so-
so this is,
this is the change from Parks and Trails to Parks and Trails and Rec came in June,
mhm.
after the SGM, which funded recreation.
Right.
And so the charter was changed at that time, materially, but not with respect to membership or
Okay.
representation.
So this is up to the committee themselves to tell us
Right.
what they wanna do.
Right.
For an ad hoc.
Yeah.
For an ad hoc committee,
Yeah.
or a committee that has to get reconstituted
Right.
every
Yeah,
year.
right.
And since board members don't need to be the chairs of these
Okay.
committees.
Okay, so what board member shall we put on this as the chair of this committee? Okay, I guess how would you like to phrase this? To assign a board member to this committee?
As liaison, I guess.
I would move that we assign Andrew and Mike D'Angelo as the board members representing this committee.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments on that? All right, hearing no comments, all those in favor? Unanimous? All right, then, would you like to present the charter for this committee? Is this a totally new charter, or, is this an update from the previous one?
Would you like me to interject? I helped with this and just trying to bring
Please
you up to
do.
speed
Yes.
on.
That'd be great.
This charter is slightly modified from last year. Karen and Carol collaborated with myself and then with Andrew to make changes that they felt would help align it, again, as the communication committee did in section 1, the last sentence there, to make the process to be approved on a committee be the same as for other standing committees again. And then they added in page 2 action items to promote these amenities through community events. And because the rec committee did start doing some of that.
Right.
And they did a great job with that. And then they took out the including Firewise part from 4 because there was indication made by the community that we were going to be taking on the Firewise effort as a community.
Part of the budget, right?
Yes. And so those are the changes, and I don't think there were any other changes. Everything else is as before, just changed the year.
Okay, I do have one question. Is there a staff liaison here with the new rec manager?
Yes.
Is it shown in here?
It isn't shown in here. But Maddie has been liaison.
Is
There's that place.
Is that one an important enough one to mention in here? Because none of the others have a specified staff person.
Well, we don't really have a staff person who's assigned for communication or for document reviewing. We do have a staff person whose job it is for recreation, and that's why I didn't know if it would be important enough to put in.
You know, we always have for communication a staff.
You've worked with one.
Well, one has been assigned to us.
That's
Yeah.
my
Right.
point.
Yeah.
I guess because it is kind of an important position and there is a specific staff person, whereas opposed to the communications person could be anybody on staff. But we have a rec.
We have a specific
Right.
So
rec person.
maybe the charter should not
Reflect that.
name that person, but specify that the committee will work with the recreation director for all of its purposes. I don't know, just add
It's already in the action item here, work with the recreation manager.
Then
Okay.
that's, to me, that's sufficient.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good, okay, all right. So would you like to move the approval of that charter?
Yes,
Sorry.
I'll make a,
Yep.
I'll move to adopt the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee for 2019.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for this charter.
Well, you did the members, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No,
Yes.
but that's what you just said, I think. I think you said them to approve the
Just-
members, not the
just the
charter.
charter.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Did I
you
say
said the
that?
charter.
I think he did say the charter, I thought
I
it
think
was the
so.
members.
Well, I can
Well,
say it
let's
again.
do it
Okay.
Yeah. Say it
There's
again.
always
I just
that.
wanted to,
Do over.
So, establish the Sun Valley Community Association Parks Trail and Rec Committee for 2019.
Committee charter,
Committee charter.
Okay,
there you go.
okay.
Second.
This is another second, okay, all right. Any further comment, questions? Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, would you like to present some members for that committee now? Got that on the back of this.
Sure, so the committee members are listed, and have been vetted, and you'll notice that there's 4 members that have expressed interest, and we are waiting to receive their volunteer forms.
Okay, why don't you just move all of those, the names, for the committee?
Do you wanna move them all, or just the ones that have already been
No,
vetted?
that's all.
Okay.
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the members as presented.
Okay,
Second?
okay. Okay, comments? All right, hearing no comments, so all those in favor? And we have a Parks and Rec Committee. Okay, moving on to the next section. I would like to request from each one of the committee chairs now that you send to me and to staff your regular meetings, when they're going to be, where they're going to be, so that, the community can see where they're meeting.
And I'll only say as a caveat, that will be a suggestion until staff tells us whether there's any conflict on those dates, and then
Well,
the
you
conflicts
talk to
need to be
staff,
fixed.
And then report to the board, okay. Okay, coming up on section D here, gate 28 seasonal closure, now we have, okay, Carol?
I think we discussed that already.
The
Actually, there was an
announcement.
announcement made, so I would say we can just pass through that one.
Okay. but there
Unless
is
somebody
the-
has some-
The map
yeah, the
here,
map
if,
is there.
you know, if anybody wants to see where that is. Yeah, that was presented by staff already. Page 52, we need to approve the, board meetings for 2019. There is a, update of this form which is posted. And at the present time, we are suggesting the board meetings take place at 7 o'clock and are generally held in the dance barn on the second and fourth Thursday following the first of the month. These are the dates in accord with that.
So
Yes,
that takes into
that's-
account the month or two that starts on Thursday, because it's the second following the first day.
That's what it says here.
Well crafted.
Okay, okay. And then down at the bottom, we do have, as much as we know right now about the committees, again, we'll kind of flesh this out as the committee chairs, decide when they're meeting and where, et cetera. So would anybody like to move,
I have a
for that?
question.
Yes,
about February and March.
yeah,
Well, the 7th of February is the first Thursday of the month.
okay. So that should go to the 14th of February and March.
And then the 28th of March.
Yeah, good catch.
Yeah.
Well, no, the fourth Thursday stays where it is. Oh, following the first.
No,
Okay.
it wouldn't be, that'd be.
Okay, so
that'd
then
be-
it's the,
That'd be the 3rd.
okay, so we're talking about 14 and 28 on both of those,
And then February,
February and March. Anything else? It looks like the rest of them are okay, and I don't think there are any holiday conflicts here, are there? I didn't see anyone, I briefly went through the calendar.
Well, the 14th is Valentine's Day, but you know, who's keeping track?
Yeah, really, there ain't no romantics on the board.
Collective sigh by all of the men.
Okay. All right,
Bring
so,
cookies.
would anybody like to move a approval of the director's meetings for the 2019 as?
As corrected, so moved.
Okay,
Second.
He seconded.
Okay, all those in favor? We got it. Now you've all committed yourself by voting yes, okay?
Do there.
We come up here now to, property owner comments. Yes, Linda.
I hope I don't have to stand this time. Linda Bradley, 2782. Just a couple of things about committees. Sometimes committee minutes get really delayed a long time. We've even had a section of some of the recent board meetings where we've had like over a month of them before they've been posted to the website and stuff. And I don't know if Roberts has any requirement. I don't think state law does at all. You know, I know that they have to be made available to the members, but I don't think in current applicable law to us, there's a timeline, but it would just be nice if when you're putting committees together, you could give them a timeline for their minutes. You know, that they be posted in 30 days of their meeting or whatever. The other thing is, with as regards to directors on committees, I believe under RCW 2403, there's a section way down buried in there somewhere about there needs to be 2 directors on a committee, and I think it's a committee of the board, so I don't know whether they're standing committees or if they're just considered, like you say, like the charters with the EPC, that sort of thing. But there is something in there about 2 of them. Then the last thing that I'd like to ask, and I mentioned this in my opening comments to you, is that if Sudden Valley did pay half of the closing costs to that sale, how much that check was, and what fund was it taken from?
Okay,
And if you'd like to send me an email as an answer, that would be fine.
okay. Other, member comments? No, seeing none. Oh, stand in the back. Name it.
I'm Sharon Lush. I'm from 25 Windward. I didn't know, but maybe I've got a puddle down at the end of my driveway because it's near the rotunda, but that's for another day. My comments are, if you finish your closed session, send somebody out to take down the sign, because I obeyed it and sat out there for a half an hour because I didn't realize you weren't in closed session any longer. And I know that sounds stupid, but I obey orders. It said not the spirit.
I did the same thing.
So sorry.
Okay. And then my other comment, which I wouldn't be taking your time now, I would have made if I would have been here. But congratulations to all the rookie board members, and thank you to all the board members, as always, for volunteering your time and all your work. And I'm looking forward to another really successful year of positive change and positive progress. And I've loved everything that's happened this year, and I think it's just gonna snowball more. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
want to apologize for the sign. We'll work that out. When Mike's here, he takes care of it. Okay, any other, members?
Yes, Mike's fault, this was on vacation.
Broadband, 14 Barstow Place. Just a really quick comment about the marina. Really happy with the construction that just got done. The gangplanks going down to the wet slips are awesome. They're real strong. I'm not the smallest guy in the world, and I don't feel like I'm bouncing on a trampoline as I head down there. I'm gonna go for a swim. And it's really, really cool to know that we have fire suppression out there. It's a great safety. I know it was a requirement, but it's also good to know that with boats out there, if there was a problem. I've seen 2 dock fires in my life, and it's a horrible thing. So I know we'll never have that down there, but what's happened is great. I'm looking forward to the hardening of the spit. It's blowing hard out there right now, you guys. If you were to walk out there, you would see some real, probably 1.5 footers rolling off our lake right into that spit, and just wears it down as time goes by. So, real quick comment, happy about it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to more improvements at our marina.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for your volunteer.
Other comments?
Welcome.
Board comments? If the, all we can do is encourage the committee, members to post their minutes, and if anybody has a problem with them not being posted, I'd say a month maybe, before their next meeting would be a good idea. And please do contact somebody on the board to let us know that that's happening. As far as the two directors mentioned in the RCWs, we will check into that and get back to you on that. And the dollar of the closing costs, I don't have that number, but we'll find out about that one too. Okay?
Can I ask one thing about the committee minutes? Communication committee, for example, only meets once a month, and so it takes an entire month before those could
before they're
potentially be
approved,
approved.
you're right, okay, make it 2
And
months.
so,
Yeah, okay, so that would be a better option, okay. All right, with no further board comments,
Move that we go to closed
will
session.
we go into closed session? Thank you.
Second.
Is that sign still out there?
Well, actually, Sharon brought it into me and